Welcome, Mr. Secretary. I'm strongly against the proposed zeroing out of democracy and governance programs, especially in Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, where civil society is facing increasing repression. In the last 2 months, nearly 3,000 Venezuelans have been jailed, over 1,000 have been injured, and nearly 70 people have been killed by Maduro's thugs. So I ask you to please place more human rights violators on our sanctions list. On a separate topic, in January of this year, your State Department determined that the PLO and the Palestinian Authority have not complied with their commitments under U.S. law, yet all potential sanctions were waived. And I ask how you can justify an increase when so many things in the budget are cut, but the PA has an increase in your budget request. Also, a few days ago, Mr. Secretary, Israel's Prime Minister called for UNRWA to be folded into the UN Commissioner for Refugees after a Hamas tunnel was found beneath 2 UNRWA schools. Is the U.S. going to support our ally Israel and prohibit funding to UNRWA? And finally, on Iran, as a witness told this committee at a hearing in February, sir, the International Atomic Energy Agency, quote, has not been able to state that Iran has addressed its concerns and questions about past nuclear weapons activities, end quote, and it also, quote, has not stated that it successfully is verifying the JCPOA's prohibitions on specific nuclear weapons development activities, end quote. So considering this lack of verification, how does the Justice Department justify its certification that Iran is in compliance with the JCPOA as it did in April? And I don't want to take more time, but if you could answer adding names to the Venezuela sanctions list, UNRWA funding, or Iran in noncompliance.
We are working with Treasury to develop a very robust list of individuals, and most recently you saw sanctions imposed on 6 members of the Venezuelan Supreme Court in response to their decision handed down, which we felt was certainly not in keeping with the Constitution. We're going to continue to be very engaged in the situation in Venezuela, but as you know, the challenge for the U.S. is to do this in a way that is productive and constructive, as opposed to the U.S. then being used by the Maduro regime as a tool to justify their actions. But rest assured, we have active efforts underway working with others in the OAS in particular. With regard to the Iran compliance, we rely upon the process called for under the JCPOA and the IAEA. We do question them vigorously, and we're in discussions with them to ensure that are they meeting all of those obligations to certify compliance to us. We are reliant upon them to make the certifications to us in order to then make decisions around filing the compliance report and then filing the sanctions waivers that follow on with that. So with respect to the Palestinians, we're in active discussion with the Palestinian Authority. As you know, we had a meeting here in Washington at president level, and I had my own bilateral meetings with President Abbas. We were recently in Israel, had meetings with the authority in Bethlehem. These discussions are around issues of how they manage terrorism and how they manage violence within the West Bank and Gaza, but it's also hopefully setting the stage for a re-engagement on a peace process with the Israelis. So all of those issues of concern have been discussed with them.
Thank you, sir, and I won't take up any more time. Thank you, sir.